once again, everybody's gathered around the hot fires and flames of the internet, on Twitch and on YouTube and around the world, as we delve into the stop-motion animation extravaganza of Laika on Hey, Did You See This One?
In a world where creativity is buried and dead, a mysterious movie studio lies in waiting, tinkering away with the tools used for captivating audiences, with heartwarming stories crafted through the exquisite art of stop-frame animation. It's time to take your first steps, or perhaps revisit them, on a whimsical journey where the magic of this unique technique unfolds, immersing you in a world of wonder and enchantment and shadow. But amidst the captivating visuals, when the world seems dark and life feels like a heavy raincoat, Hey, Did You See This One? Reminds you to slow down and take things frame by frame.
Gather round, freaks, and welcome to Hey, Did You See This One? It is a new month. That means it is a new theme. We are here talking about the stop-motion studio Laika for frame by frame. Hey, did you like this one? At the end of every episode, I'm going to ask the question, did you like this one? I'm throwing that at you guys now. I didn't premeditate this at all. It just popped into my head as I looked at the sign that I made behind me. Hello and welcome. This is episode 122 of the hit podcast, Hey, Did You See This One? I want to thank everybody for coming tonight. This has been our show. We'll see you next time. It's just funny to me that our intros seem to be getting longer and longer, but Steve put so much dang work into them that they're just fantastic.
Oh, that one's maybe a little bit too long.
It's a little bit, yeah.
Where I'm like, I got a little crazy with the music. I'm like, I don't want to cut it off. I like the music too much.
Well, you managed to make it so the beginning and the end have the same like little musical beat, so it works out really well. If you've noticed, we do have a guest as always. Tim Covey is back. Everybody, Tim Covey is back. Welcome back, Tim. This is your... Get this. You've been on this show. Here's what I'm going to tell you. You've been on this show 6 times.
Oh my God. Is it actually 6?
It's 6 because
Yeah.
I wrote because I'm trying to because there's like the 5 times club that I'm trying to keep track of for people that I want to change their picture, but I changed your picture after the new year. Anyway, welcome back to the show for the 6th time. You're going to be here for
Thank you.
7th time in April. It's, you know what I mean? It's big
Yeah.
big stuff. It's big business. So thank you for being back. Before we get into the show, we play a little game on social media Mondays and Tuesdays where I put up a piece of the poster and I have people guess. This week, people got it. People love the movie that we're talking about tonight, ParaNorman. We're talking about ParaNorman by Laika Studios. We'll get into the director and all that in just a minute. But this is fan guessing game.
Congratulations! You have successfully guessed the correct answer, which is the answer you provided. Congratulations!
Congratulations! Fantastic. So yeah, we did have quite a few this week. I've tried to basically just like cut it off after a certain point, but I did have a special one from Matt Philp that I'll say in a second. He didn't get it, but he had a funny answer based on the picture that I put up. First and foremost, an easy one from TikTok. I wasn't able to connect with this person to get a message from them, but their name is Miguel at VSP6RKER. VS Porker. I don't know if that means something bad. I don't know. Figure it out. Also, Brendan Caulfield, person who's gotten it right before. He just wanted to say keep it weird. Future guest B. Dolly, who's going to be on for our horror month next month, the Grimoire 5. I said, what's your message? And she said, haha, don't need one. The satisfaction of being right about something pop culture is all the reward I need. So gotcha. Friend of mine and my cousin's girlfriend, although I don't want her to just be known as that, Mia. That's a weird way to... she said, yes, if you want to plug my art Insta at Kiloquoejk, Kiloquoejk. Go over there and follow her art page. She's very talented. That would be sweet. My message is just a big Tramana! Because when I was there in the summer, we were riffing on how The Rock says, Tramana! Ha ha ha! So shout out to The Rock, also friend of the show, fan of the show, Dwayne The Rock Johnson. Noel got it again. Check out Showgirls episode with your old pal Noel, and Stick Taps and Stitches, a hockey podcast wherever you get your podcasts. Steven helped us out with some rad sound bites. He is so talented. And also Jason's a real beaut. And then another person who got it before, Lauren Caborn, he wanted to say, worrying is like a rocking chair. It gives you something to do, but doesn't get you anywhere. And wanted to plug the Fumble podcast. It's a D&D podcast based in Halifax, I presume, with industry folk in the food service industry. So check that out. You can find it at facebook.com/WTFumblepod. WTF Umblepod. WT Fumblepod. And finally, a new person from the Facebook group, Nathan Sprague. He said, hey, did you see this one? If people are in need of silk screen printing, stickers, and more, keep Industry Horror, also known as Autism Works Print Shop, in mind. You would help keep employment of autistic adults. And if you're a fan of horror movies, as with ParaNorman gives homage to, then give the Industry Horror Coffin Cast a listen. Thank you. Now let's open the coffin to start the show. So that's fun. Yeah, definitely go check out the Autism Works print shop for sure. I'm sure you can Google that or check it out on Facebook. Thank you, Nathan. Thank you for everybody who got it this week. I really do appreciate everybody who interacts with our show, which of course leads me to my call to action. We are now all caught up on social media. You can find us pretty much everywhere at Hey Did You See This One? Go like our videos, subscribe, follow us, hit the notification bell, dropkick the notification bell, in fact. All of our episodes are in audio format across Spotify, YouTube. There's a lot of stuff on Twitch. There's a lot of video on YouTube. All of our episodes are there on YouTube. You can go right back to the shitty first episode where it's just me and the old co-host Kaylin did an Instagram live. And if you fast forward to now, 120 episodes later, you can see how much we've grown. As
120 years later.
120 years later. That was like, it's going to be year 4 in October. So that is that. Thank you for everybody who listens. Shout out again to White Bat Audio who didn't do the theme music this week, but I always use his stuff in the opening. And with that, I believe we can move on to our brief history.
A brief history.
This is, of course, the segment of the show where we talk about our brief history with the movie we're talking about. It's going to be pretty brief for me. However, around here, it's a time-honored tradition to give our guests the first opportunity to give their brief history. And, of course, Tim, you've been here 6 times. I don't have to explain anymore. Why don't you give us your brief history with the film ParaNorman?
Yeah, I know the ropes by now, but my brief history with this is actually... I thought it was brief, but it turned out to be longer than I thought because I saw this before during my pre-CPAP life when apnea was killing me one snore at a time, and I apparently fell asleep for it and just lost complete memory of it. So even though I technically had seen it before, I managed to kind of relive it again this week, and I was regretted that I didn't remember it because it is a fantastic movie. I love this stuff. Love it to death. So it was great to jump back into it again and watch it in this state of mind. Now that I am in the CPAP era where I'm awake in life, to watch it and really appreciate the detail and hard work. It was actually a huge joy, and that's my brief history.
That's great. I'm in that CPAP life too. I'm a big old boy. Snoring is murdering me. And it's funny, I went to the sleep doctor and he was like, "Oh, I can see all your results here from your CPAP machine. I notice you don't use it on the weekends." I'm like, "Yeah, I hate using it. So on the weekend I take a break." And he's like, "That's not how that works. You have to keep using it or you're burning the candle at both ends." At any rate, let's not be so dark.
Yeah. No, I'm happy to be happy.
It's like taking heart medication and you're like, yeah, I don't like taking it. I don't take it on the weekend.
Yeah, basically. That's his reaction. But thank you, Tim. Steve, why don't you give us your brief history for the film ParaNorman?
Well, I don't use a breathing apparatus when I sleep, but I did see this movie in theaters. And I remembered so much of it because I loved it so much. I saw it on a date, and it was great because we both thought everything was funny at the same time, and it made me feel really good about the date. And then I dated that person for 7 years, so it was kind of true, I guess. But yeah, it was amazing. I hadn't seen anything stop frame in so long, and I think the only person on the planet of my age bracket who was excited for this movie. I just tried to get a ton of people to see it. Nobody wanted to see it. So I forced somebody to come watch it with me. And I'm glad we did because there's a lot to love about this movie. And we'll talk about it when we get into the body. But
body of the episode.
I think that this movie is perfect for anybody who ever has felt weird or estranged or outcast in their life.
Yeah, so, I have a lot to say about those.
And a pretty strong connection for me, at least.
Yeah,
that's great. Thanks, Steve. Also, new first-time chatter, Kitty KTTV. Thank you for joining us. I checked out her stream, her page earlier today, and it's good shit. So check them out as well. For my brief history, I had heard of this movie. I had never seen it until like yesterday and today. And it's funny because when you were like, we're going to do Laika movies, you put a typo in the spreadsheet. And I thought that we were doing a movie called ParaNorman. And the whole time I never looked it up.
I did that on purpose because I wanted to fuck with you.
What's this ParaNorman? Yeah.
That sounds like one of those like weird sort of like Japanese action hero movies from like the late 60s, like a black and white superhero movie from the 60s or something.
I thought it was going to be like an Ultraman thing, which is interesting because Kubo and the Two Strings is like a cool, like, is it Japanese?
Yeah, it's got
Yes.
it's got a lot of like folklore-y stuff, but it's also got a lot of originality to it as well. It's
So I
kind of
probably saw that and just got my wires crossed. Anyway,
like, do they only make Japanese folklore, this Leica studio? I guess Leica also kind of sounds like it could be a Japanese animation studio.
true, but you showed me the opening sequence for Missing Link one night when I was at your place. So I
Yeah, that
was
was how I convinced you to do this month. I was like, look, 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 it's got the Loch Ness Monster in it, man.
in a Bigfoot. Great. So that's our brief history. Moving on now. I didn't get a chance to look up the director, but I'll have you guys fill me in. Here's director talk.
All right. Quiet on set. Are we rolling? Okay, let's shoot this piece of shit.
Sound. Speed. Action!
This is, of course, director talk. The sound I keep in because I like the sound, the sting, but we've gotten some good use out of it. Last month we talked about John Carpenter all month, and the well kind of ran dry for this actual segment, but I believe that all these movies have different directors. But that said, if you guys want to sort of do a little rundown of the Leica studio situation, this would be the time for that as well. So yeah, that's that.
Okay. So, I mean, we've talked about this briefly many episodes ago. I think, Tim, when you were on your first time on, I think we talked about Leica quite a bit because a lot of the alumni from that are the reason that Leica exists today. Even
from
Coraline,
the Mark Twain era. Yeah,
even Coraline, the sort of the bread and butter of Leica, directed by Selleck, who is, you know, the director of The Nightmare Before Christmas, and he worked on the Adventures of Mark Twain. But I think that's the only thing he's done for Leica. But at the same time, Leica's library is so tiny still. They do a lot of outsourcing for things. Like they'll make animation for other stuff. But when it comes to their features, I believe it's just the 5 that they have. And there's one slated to come out next year in 2025, but I don't really know anything about it other than the title, which I've forgotten already. I looked it up yesterday.
Wildwood,
right. It kind of sounds like it could be a Western. If you have seen The Missing Link, which we'll talk about at some point this month, it does have a lot of Western elements to it. So I think that maybe they kind of got the bug while they were making that. And they're like, let's make a pure Western, but we'll see. That's just my prediction. But they always kind of deal with fantasy, right? That's their forte. It's a very fanciful animation style. It's very storybook like it's almost like children's drawings brought to life, which was
exactly.
Tim Burton kind of influenced the style of The Nightmare Before Christmas, and then that style just sort of bled into everything stop frame. Even to this day, when you look at stuff, it always is compared to that. I guess that's sort of like the gold standard when it comes to stop frame animation. And it's an interesting style, and I like it. But I also, if you look from movie to movie, they don't look exactly the same. There's always a very distinctive style. If you were to walk down, the children's book aisle of a bookstore and look at the different illustrations, it's reminiscent to that, where everything is very otherworldly but different and have their own identity. The same can be said for each of these movies. Travis Knight, the CEO of Leica, such a strange story. I can't remember if we talked about this too much.
A little bit, yeah. But it's very, very unique. Where it's like, it was the son of the owner of Nike, who is kind of show running a lot of that. But it almost sounds like the kiss of death at first, but sometimes these things end up kind of breathing life into it. Like at least there's some blood running through the veins of this in the form of money, because these projects, when it comes to theatrical release, and you go back to what we originally talked about, Adventures of Mark Twain, but all sorts of stop animation, clay animation, and all that stuff within that vein and that style. It's hard for them to make a return in money because, as you're saying before, that you were kind of the only person amongst your age and peer group more or less excited to go and see it, and you had to kind of encourage other people to see it with you. They kind of encounter this issue where like Nightmare Before Christmas is almost an outlier because it almost had the big Tim Burton name on it to ferry it into everyone's attention.
Yeah.
Whereas this other stuff, like yeah, like you think about the commercial success of Coraline, like you know, if it wasn't for having like Neil Gaiman's name kind of attached to it, would have been as well received.
They
So
also
so
they
yeah, to
also
have someone.
sorry, I was gonna say they also
No,
for Coraline, they approached Selleck and was like, "Is it okay if we put Tim Burton's name on this just to give it that extra kick?" And Selleck was like,
yeah.
"You can ask Tim Burton," which I'm okay with that, but like I don't know if he'll be okay with that. And I guess they
Yeah.
didn't do it, but yeah, it's funny.
Yeah,
So
and I think to their credit to have their own little independent thing now. Now it's Leica Studios and doing their own projects. But like, yeah, this movie in particular was 3 years in the making. So like to get the stuff off
They're
the
also
ground and
very
into the
expensive
theaters.
to make, right? And they don't
Yeah.
do a ton of marketing, but they do marketing. I remember there was quite a bit of marketing for the Missing Link, but it didn't do well. I think it's commercially it's the worst of all of them, but it did come out sort of in that era right before
Hmm.
COVID, and it just was a
Hmm.
bad time. And also, a lot of people don't even realize that they are stop frame animation movies.
Yeah.
I showed that video to a couple of people that I edited for the show today, uh, throughout the week, and they were like, "Well, why are you doing these movies? They're not stop frame." And I'm like, "They, yes, they are. Yeah, they 100% are.
Yeah.
It's just that the style has evolved so much from
Yeah.
Rudolph the Red-Nosed Reindeer that people sometimes can't tell that
doesn't have
it's
that
almost
like
too smooth, you know?
yeah, it looks like CGI, and
Yeah.
that's the thing that people can't really wrap their head around. But like it's all practical, right? Except for sometimes when they touch things up, like the thing in
Yeah.
your picture when she's glitching out, like that's probably CGI. What's up, Churro Smash? Welcome.
You'd be
Um,
surprised though at how much isn't. Like if
yeah.
you watch the making of, you would think certain things are CGI, and then you watch it and you're like,
Yeah.
oh no, that's not. It's actually the lighting is all practical. The effects are, when she's glitching around, they have these stretched pieces of fabric and plastic
Oh, okay.
that then a
Yeah.
globule is attached to, and it's stop frame, and you think that it isn't. You think that they're like cheating, but they're not. They're doing it all in camera,
Yeah.
and it's crazy.
That's crazy because the
Yeah.
sky, the sky
And
was especially impressive to me. That was one of my favorite parts of the movie when the witch's face is in the sky.
Mhm.
And I mean, you could just in 2012 the CGI was good enough to just make this as CGI, and it's so refreshing to know that this movie had the love and the care put into it to make it this special thing. And I think that's going to be sort of the running theme for all of these movies. Like this movie particularly, like we're going to get into it when we talk about the body, but it has so many weird little twists and subversion of expectations and all this stuff that if this movie was just made and shit out by the CGI machine, they wouldn't have to do all these little extra things. It's almost like they input these little beats and these little fun moments as they're making it because they fully have the ability to do that, I would imagine.
Yeah.
yeah.
They're because it's such a long process, they will work on, 24 frames over the course of 2 days. Sometimes they'll only get 12 frames done in a day, which is crazy. It's crazy. It's
Oh,
they work on maybe 20 seconds of a movie each day, and so that's why it takes so long. But even if you just watch one making of for any of these movies, the process is more or less the same, but you can see just how long it takes. And you would think it would drive people crazy, but if you listen to interviews or read interviews with a lot of the animators, they're like, no, it actually is weirdly therapeutic. You get so focused that you forget about everything else that exists in your
I've
life because you're just trying to get an arm to move
I was
correctly.
I was doing a little bit of stop motion with a couple friends one time many years ago. Like we were just doing a little Star Wars thing on a green screen.
Mhm.
And I remember it being like it's fun because you're kind of just playing with action figures.
Right.
yeah.
I also just wanted to say that the director for this specifically is Sam Fell. I don't know. Sorry if I missed you guys say that. Co-directed and written by Chris Butler, They've both worked on a bunch of stuff. Chris Butler is more of a writer, it seems like, where Sam Fell has done. He directed a bunch of shorts. He did a movie called The Tale of Despero. A movie
Starring
called
Matthew Broderick.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
a Chicken Run sequel, it looks like, too, from last year called Dawn of the Nugget.
Yeah. A
And
sequel that came out like 20 years after the original. It's crazy.
Chicken Run has that Wallace and Gromit style to it. Is that done by the same people as Wallace and Gromit?
No, but I'm sure there's some cross-pollination when it comes to animators. Because it is stop frame, but it's a different type of stop frame. So this is puppets, right? They're all carved puppets and articulated puppets that you have faces you swap out for and mouths you swap out for. Whereas Wallace and Gromit is claymation, so you manipulate the clay and sculpt the clay to do what you want. But I don't know if that's evolved past clay, but if you watch the Wallace and Gromit from the 90s, it's very clearly clay. Like you can see like fingerprints and stuff on the guys' faces.
I read an article that was like that specific clay they use is like running out like worldwide. So Wallace and Gromit's days
moon clay. They have to go back to the moon to get it.
Where there's cheese.
Got another first-time chatter here. Yes, I am Gregor, and also Churro Smash, people that I was talking to earlier today. So thank you for coming in. Do you guys have anything additional to add about the director? It's going to be another month where we're probably retreading the same stuff.
I mean, I've seen some of the other work, but none of it is really as great as this. So it's kind of one of those points where I'm like, yeah, Flushed Away was a movie that came out and I definitely saw, but I have absolutely no memory of what it's about. I think it's like the World Cup is happening or something, and like there's a city of rats in the sewer, and the plan is to get everybody to flush their toilets at the same time during the World Cup to like destroy a city. I think, but I can't remember if that's correct or not.
I will say that this is Sam Fell's top like star rating on IMDb. He did do a television show that looks fully animated called Rex the Runt, which has that's also stop motion, but that has a slightly higher rating, but that's a TV show, so like a lot of people would have worked on it, but this is like kind of the gem in his
Flushed Away I believe was like a Wallace and Gromit style, but I don't know if it was CGI just done in the style of Wallace and Gromit, because there is a particular sort of look to the Wallace and Gromit puppets. Like they have the large mouths and sort of like the weird,
it's very rounded.
It's like Chicken Run, Wallace and Gromit, and Flushed Away all have the same visual style. It's like Futurama in The Simpsons, I guess, is what you could compare it to.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, do you guys want to investigate a body? That's how I'm going to say it.
The body of your uncle?
Yeah. There is the body of my uncle.
Everybody back up, because here comes the
Jason's
body of
uncle.
the episode.
I do have a dead uncle. Sorry. I've had 3 sips of beer for the first time in 32 days, and I'm telling you, it's working. This is, of course, the body of the episode. This is the quote-unquote podcast moment, the podcast point, where we're going to run down the movie. I've written out basically what happens in the movie. I'm going to say some parts of the movie, and then we're going to have a conversation. So starting right off, they kind of, like I was saying in the intro bit, they immediately subvert our expectations by putting up feature film and then showing some moments from a Frankenstein zombie sort of movie. The thing that stuck out,
it's like a Return of the Living Dead, or
very stereotypical kind of zombie movie that you find in the 70s.
Exactly what I want to say. The woman screaming in this part is like so over the top.
Yeah, it's like they've made it to be like specifically like a shitty movie from the 70s where the actors' hearts aren't really it. Like, isn't there a microphone comes down at one point?
There's a boom mic moment. Yeah,
it's very funny.
Norman is talking to his grandmother, who's like, "What's happening on the TV?"
Yeah, and it's all like it's shot in 4:3, so you're kind of like, "What's going on here?" And then once it cuts to Norman, the quality is just like vastly different where you're like, oh, I almost feel like it would have been interesting if they went full Rudolph animation, like just like really shitty. Like he's watching a movie in the world of an animation movie. What if the animation is shittier than the
That would be
animation
good.
that we're watching, kind of thing?
Because they're
Yeah.
employing something like that in the new. I don't know if you guys saw the trailer for the new Death Stranding game, but the Norman Reedus character has this like little puppet that he has with him now. That is wisecracking, obviously, but its frame rate is lower.
I don't know anything about it. Yeah.
The frame rate of my point is the frame rate of the doll is much lower than the rest of the game, so it
Right.
stands out in a similar way to what you're describing, which I think would be really interesting.
Well, they did something in Into the Spider-Verse, which is pretty cool, where the Anarchy Spider-Man, they animated him on a different frame rate than everybody else because even in the world of animation, he's breaking the rules, kind of thing, right? So it's like
Yeah.
the way that they animate that movie, they animate every second frame, so it's kind of has that choppiness. But then for that specific character, they animated on every third frame, I think. But then sometimes they would go to fourth frame or back to second, and they would just kind of like so watching that character is specifically jarring because you're like, ugh. Anarchy Spider-Man. He doesn't follow any rules, not even the rules of animation.
We're also
This ain't your daddy, Spider-Man.
We're also introduced. My dad actually likes those movies, and he's the biggest Spider-Man fan I know. We're introduced to kind of the family at this point. We get the dad, who's Jeff Garlin, the mom, who is Leslie Mann, and the sister, who is Anna Kendrick. They kind of give him shit for being a loner a little bit here, and then we get the reveal. They're like, "What are you talking to ghosts again?" kind of thing, because he's like,
How many times do we have to tell you, Norman? Your grandma's dead. You're like, oh my god.
and then right before the title comes up, we get the effect for what the ghosts look like for Norman. I wish they would have done this a little bit more. We get a really soon after this, we get an extended shot of like how he sees all the different ghosts. But I wish,
very good, yeah.
but they kind of focus on the zombie element of it for the second half of the movie. So I really liked the way that the ghosts, the ethereal green, like almost ghostbusteriness of the ghosts, looked cool.
Yeah.
And
I think that it's also, for anybody familiar with Star Wars, you're like, oh, this is kind of like how Star Wars opens, where he's like, you better not be talking to his weird, estranged uncle. His uncle who lives on the hill, who is a hermit. And you're like, okay, so this is like an Obi-Wan situation. Got it.
Mm-hmm.
except for much more endearing in the end, I would say.
A little bit, yeah. His parents don't get horribly murdered and burned by stormtroopers.
True. But the dad mentions
And he doesn't kiss his sister.
in this one anyway. Maybe there's a cut where they don't know their brother and sister. The dad thinks the uncle's responsible for all this nonsense, and we just cut to the uncle taking pills and rummaging around his creepy old house. And
it's one of the great things about these movies is everything is very deliberate, right? And so like because it takes so long to film and they can't change things once they've shot things, they have to really plan everything out super specifically and well ahead of time. So a movie like this doesn't just cut at a time when they're like, oh, that doesn't work, let's cut to this instead. It's like, no, they've deliberately planned everything out. So you get those nice transitions of somebody saying something and then cutting directly to another person referencing the thing that person just said. Where he's like, he better not be talking to his uncle. I doubt his uncle even knows who he is. And then we cut to his uncle holding a picture of him. Okay.
It zooms out and he's got the all the pictures and the tacks with the string attaching all of them together, like you see in a police station.
And he's just mumbling and grumbling him to himself in that wonderful deep ass
John Goodman
voice, Fred Flintstone voice. Yeah.
And Jeff Garlin at first, his voice at the beginning of the movie sounded a little pitched up or something. I was like, is that Seth Rogen? He didn't say enough lines yet.
They sound the same.
Yeah.
Basically.
But then a minute later, I was like, oh, that's Jeff Garlin, obviously. But John Goodman, I was like, yep. You can't, you know John Goodman's talking when he's talking. Mm-hmm. As I said, Norman, there's a montage of Norman getting ready. Then he heads to school. And along the way, he sees a bunch of different style ghosts. There's like a hippie and a greaser and a parachute person in a tree.
Mafia man.
A
He's like, hey, how
mafia
you doing?
guy.
He's like, hey,
Yeah,
how
with
you
his- with
doing?
with his feet in the cement shoes and the
Yeah.
fish swimming around him. Yeah.
It
I
must
also
have
like the
been-
greaser being like, yo, Norman, what are you playing hooky over here?
Hey!
It's interesting to me that Norman is like so afraid later. Like he becomes the hero pretty quick, but it's like he's been seeing ghosts, I assume, his whole life. So like if I was just seeing ghosts all the time and was just like acclimated to it, I don't know if a lot would scare me. I guess if the dead started to rise.
Yeah, but I think he also, because he knows so much about ghosts, he knows that ghosts can't actually hurt you, so he's not scared of ghosts. But a zombie, they can eat your brain.
Yeah, it's true. This also has. What were you gonna say, Tim?
Oh no, I was just gonna say, yeah, like it's interesting you point out that dynamic where like that he is afraid of zombies because he's been watching like so many zombie movies and all that kind of stuff. So that's kind of informed to where he's at. Yeah.
There's a lot of so I kind of lay this out more in my outro, but this movie is one of those situations that's like it's a family friendly kind of more kids movie, but like if you're an adult watching this, there's a lot in it for you. And the dark humor and some of the more adult jokes like hit pretty hard. And I think the thing that hit me the hardest in this movie that like maybe a kid won't think through, or maybe it'll affect them to affect change in the environment, as right as he enters the school or he's walking up to the school, a bird flies by who is dead, is a ghost, and has a fucking thing around its neck, a six-pack plastic around its neck, and like tries to chirp, and
but it just coughs like.
I was like, oh my god. Yeah, and
there's
also,
a lot of good sort of like adult humor, but it's safe enough, but there's even a couple that you're like, wow, that's pretty risque, but obviously I don't give a shit. I'm watching this movie as an adult. I don't care.
I'm almost 40 years old. The score is really interesting throughout this movie, but as he walks up to the school, the like song that's playing, I think it plays at the end and in the credits as well, was really well composed, sounded really good, kind of groovy, not what I was expecting. This goes back to what we were talking about earlier, where it's like the love that they just put into everything. Like they clearly, I didn't look up who composed it, right, but I would imagine that they chose a composer who could fit this vibe and could fit all of the like different sorts of moments, because there's like family stuff, there's like hard horror, there's just going to school, like I said, and it's a bit haunting and uplifting in a weird way is what I wrote down. So that's good. And
the composer was John Bryan, and he's much like anyone talented, he's done tons of stuff, and it's like the list of bands that he's been in just goes on and on. But he's produced with people like Fiona Apple, Robin Hitchcock, the Crystal Method, Kanye West. The composer for this, he's been around the block.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
all sorts of movies.
Yeah, even if you just look at the filmography, you can recall that DNA and be like, oh, Step Brothers, the sort of like the original score for Step Brothers does sort of sound ParaNorman-ish if you think about it for 2 seconds. I Heart Huckabees. I think he did Eternal Sunshine as well. Let me check.
Sunshine of Spotless Mind, yes. Punch Drunk Love, Magnolia, because that's all the same director, I think. So, and that's and directors often have their go-tos, but
when they have that, it has that sort of charming, jaunty sort of quality to it, where it's uplifting, but there's something sad about it. Yeah,
it inhabits the movie very, very well, and that juxtaposition you just brought up of like there is a pluckiness to it and a somber undertone, which is a part of the theme of this whole movie of bullying.
Yeah.
And uniqueness amongst the general populace. To bring up something super quick of uniqueness, it's something that you notice, or at least and maybe I'm the only one who thinks this. I might be wrong. I didn't have a chance to look this up if this was truly the case, but did anyone notice something about the eyes of both Norman and his uncle that they're hexagonal and not round.
Yeah, I
I
did
did not
recognize
notice
Not
that.
like,
I
not like,
didn't notice the uncle, but I did notice his eyes are very prominent and
yeah.
hexagons.
And there's more to that, I think, later in the movie, but I won't mention it yet. But
Okay.
that was something that I caught on to, that this is because with the look of the movie, as we were kind of going through the town and seeing everything, the one thing that kind of captured me, that like, even though this is not out of Leica Productions purview, but the asymmetry of everything, that
Yeah.
trees look like trees and roads look like roads and anything metallic looks like metal, but nothing like when you see the lockers in the school, no one locker looks quite like the one next to it, even though they all fit in together.
Yeah.
And to kind of think of that like level of detail where it looks like it fits but it doesn't, and to kind of echo back to what you said before, Steve, of there's like a childlike depiction in the proportions of things, where even people's heads, even though they work emotively, they're not quite symmetrical.
That's,
And,
Yeah, no, it's
even with the main character.
you think of something like anime, for example, where everything is perfect and like everything is symmetrical and lines are sharp, and then you look at something like this where one of Norman's eyes is purposefully higher than the other, and then you look at his dad and one of his eyes is like super high compared to the other one, and you know that's just reality as well. Like
Yeah.
people are
Oh, yeah.
not symmetrical for the most part, and if you are, you're lucky.
was this the
You got
first?
that.
I learned that in self-portraits and art class. Yeah.
Was this the first movie that sort of informed this style? Because I've noticed in gaming, most, like a lot of, I won't say most or a lot, I won't make a blanket statement like that, but a few games that sort of are meant to look stop framey or claymated. I'm thinking of Neighbors, you know, or Bad Neighbor, or whatever.
Well, I
that
mean,
one
you
is.
can look at something like Psychonauts,
Or
which came out
Psychonauts.
Yes.
which
I
came
was
out
thinking
before this
Psychonauts, too.
movie, well before this movie.
I think it's like 2004.
I think that the style itself is decades and decades
Okay.
before this, but you know, like even if you look at Tim Burton's stuff from like Beetlejuice or something, where his like sculptures that
Yeah.
come alive, and that it's very similar to this sort of style, and that's from like German expressionism film from like the 40s.
Yeah. I was going to
30s
say, if you look at like even political cartoons in the 30s and like
Yeah.
old New Yorker publications and stuff like that, that you'll see the Picasso asymmetrical eyes type of thing put onto simple looking characters and stuff like that. So
Yeah.
Fox
Or
there,
just
there
like-
is a lot of this that has a long history.
yeah, or even just like overblown political cartoon like caricatures and stuff. It's like you think of like
Yeah.
images of like Prince Charles from the 90s and stuff, where it's like, oh, his teeth are the size of like the car that he's driving and shit.
Yeah, he looks like a boglin.
Yeah.
But yeah, but it's interesting where like you look at Nightmare Before Christmas, where it almost has it gets away with an almost, and pardon the comparison, a Giger like symmetry where it looks symmetrical without actually being 100% symmetrical. Whereas with this, it kind of embraces, and I feel somewhat this is intentional, but like it embraces weirdness in the world, that there's
Yeah,
uniqueness
okay.
to be found around you. Yeah.
I love that.
And yeah, and I find that to be kind of strung throughout the whole movie, beyond the obvious themes, but like visually and subtly, it's kind of there the whole time with you.
Yeah, even like the popular or attractive people in this world who are meant to be popular or attractive are also completely asymmetrical
Courtney
and weird
still
looking.
like, she's a little bit more symmetrical than her mom, but she's still got that weird forehead that her mom has. I think Norman it might be the most symmetrical. Elvin's a little bit symmetrical too, but he's got that like gray skin. I like what you're saying. Like whenever they do wide shots of the town, everybody looks crazy. Everybody has a crazy different look, which is really interesting that they did. I assume that they didn't skimp. They made all of these models. Like obviously they didn't have to animate all of them the same way that they animate the main characters, but those wide shots, the town didn't feel dead. Remember He-Man? I know it's a live action movie, but like He-Man, the town's just dead because they couldn't hire the people.
Yeah.
Everybody was on vacation. We discussed this, guys. We talked about this already.
To death.
They're showing. Sorry, go ahead, Tim.
Oh no, I was saying that like yeah, they really peppered in a lot of life and activity, but like interestingly enough, in the beginning of the movie, you're introduced to the most activity in town through the ghosts. That their color, even though they're all kind of see-through green, but they're colorful in their behavior, and that they're so in a very Beetlejuice way, very accustomed to just being dead.
Mm-hmm.
They've been dead for so long and in this state of existence that it's just another morning. It's the equivalent of seeing the neighbor mowing their lawn on your way to school. They're like, oh, top of the morning to you.
It's so nice when you get the reveal of all the ghosts too, because
yeah, that's the thing too, is that like even for
sorry, you kind of like jambled around there for a second. I couldn't tell what was going on. I was going to say the reveal of the ghost is very nice, but up until that point, it really shows us, the audience, like what everyone else is seeing, and it just makes him look absolutely insane.
Yes, especially I really liked, just before we move on to like the school bit here, I just want to bring up the fact that as he's walking to school, he's talking to nobody, and he walks up to Roadkill, a dead raccoon on the ground, and he's
like, "Hey fella, come on,
hey
buddy."
fella, and he's petting it, and somebody sees him from across the street, and they're just like, "What are you doing?" And then that's when it like morphs over to us seeing all the ghosts, which was a really cool reveal, because then you find out that, and they do this a lot in movies with ghosts, like there's 6 ghosts in this room with me right now, you know what I mean? I don't know how that's possible, because this is a brand new build, so unless there's like it
was built on a graveyard,
or a whole bunch of people died while building the building.
Jason, they moved the tombstones, but they didn't move the bodies.
That's a classic. That's a classic recipe for ghosts, as we know. Cool. I just want to move the plot along a little bit, and just because we're introduced now to Neil and Alvin, and we find out that Norman is a social outcast. He's bullied. And he sees the guy from the cutaway too as he's walking to school from around a corner.
A nice Halloween reference.
There's a great Halloween reference later that's Halloween and Friday the 13th at the same time. But yes, him standing at the edge of the thing, and then he's gone.
Edge of the hedge.
Edge of the hedge. I'm edging the hedges. We see Elvin the bully. Who is Christopher Mintz-Plasse, I believe his name is. He's McLovin. That was another voice that I immediately was like, that's got to be him.
Imagine being McLovin and knowing that no matter how many other roles you play in your life, people will still say McLovin, and most people will be like, "Oh, yes."
I mean, I'm fine with that. What I've actually noticed about that character is like he always plays asshole characters, it seems like now.
Yeah, arrogant. Yeah,
like he's the bad guy in Kick-Ass 1 and 2, and like
it's because there's a certain
he's a piece of shit in.
He has an annoying quality about him.
True.
Which, by all accounts that I've heard, he is like the nicest and smartest guy you'll ever meet in your life. Sure. And there was like some reality show he was on, and somebody was like, "Oh, I'm not going to call him McLovin. He probably gets that all the time." So he called him his real name. And then he's like, do people like call you McLovin all the time? He's like, "Yeah, and I fucking hate it." And then like another contestant for the show came in and was like, "McLovin!" like right away. And he was just like, "God."
I'm surprised he wasn't in the This Is the End movie. I guess they kind of might.
He was.
Was he?
Yeah, he gets cocaine blown in his face by Michael Cera.
Yeah, right.
And he goes, "I've never done cocaine before."
Shit, I can't remember that. That's fucked. I love that party. Elvin says
everyone's at that party.
It's true, even Rihanna.
Paul Rudd's at that party, and he steps on someone's head by accident, crushes their brain.
Fun story about Rihanna, and that they wanted the thing with Michael Cera slapping her on the ass, and she said he can do that if I could punch him in the face as hard as I can, or slap him as hard as I can.
And she did.
And he was probably fine with
I think he asked her, he was like, "Do you mind if I slap your ass like pretty hard?" And then she said, "Yes, but I will slap you just as hard back."
Basically knock you out.
Yeah.
Alvin hits us with the line, "Why don't you go see some more ghosts, goober?" Which just stuck out to me. I don't know. Calling people a goober is great. we're introduced.
He has
to,
a couple of really dumb but kind of good lines throughout the movie, I think, where at one point he's like, "I'm gonna kill you so badly that you're gonna have to talk to yourself because you'll be a
because
ghost."
you'll be a ghost.
Very good. Yeah.
Yeah, that's after he's trying to write his name in the bathroom and keeps misspelling his own name.
He also misspells tomorrow on the locker. He misspells dead later on. He's just a very terrible speller.
You know,
Yeah.
the education
But
system in the
that
United States leaves things to be desired.
but speaking of the writing on the lockers, that was actually a great way to show that Norman and Neil were kind of at like on the same level with each other, because Neil at the same time was also wiping off graffiti off his locker as well. I thought that was a
certainly.
great touch to kind of show that like we're both in the thick of it kind of together.
And it's interesting too, because when we're like, this isn't it's not the first day of school, right? Like it's already, he's getting bullied, but this,
It's definitely early in the school year because it's fall, so that's usually
true.
when school starts.
We get introduced to Neil and the girl with glasses whose name I didn't get, because I thought she was going to be more of a thing, but she's really just kind of person on the phone later, and she it kind of is the exposition dump during the play that we're going to get to here in a sec to like explain, because she's like the correcting people character. She's kind of like a Lisa Simpson, and when I thought that I got the impression that like they're always trying to be friends with Norman, but really it seems like this is the first time that they're actually breaking that like wall. So yeah, it's probably like the first week of school.
It also seems like this could be like their first year of high school,
right?
Like because they're pretty young feeling, right? Like
they're
they
11.
seem like they. Right,
But
like they go to the same
9?
school as like these kids who are teenagers. I get like my schooling here was different, right? It was like middle school was its own thing to separate high school and primary school. So
11 is only like grade 6 or something.
Yeah, like my school.
Do they
was
say their
7.
age? I don't think they say their age in this movie.
They do, because later in the movie, like Norman's like, "You're 11 too."
Yeah.
So
could have a late birthday.
They're in junior. I think Elvin. I think they're in junior high. I think it's their first year of junior high, because grade 6 to 9, where I grew up, was junior high. I know here grade 9 it starts. It is high school, but this is an American fucking.
There's
movie.
different things all over the world.
Different things all over the world.
Let's just not focus too hard on it.
The teacher who's putting together the play, and she's extremely extra, and they're doing a play about the witch of the curse of the witch of the town.
I like how she had like a carpal tunnel brace on her wrist. It's just like there were little details about her that I'm like, yeah, I know this lady. I know who this woman is. I've seen her in real life. I've met her before.
Probably the English teacher also, in addition to putting this play together, because she's like, everybody's terrible in English. We get the first moments of them. They're like practicing for the play. We get the kind of like explanation of the curse. And then Norman isn't just seeing ghosts anymore. He's now seeing like reality crack around him and sort of
he's having like a Silent Hill moment where reality is bleeding into the past, and he's not just seeing ghosts anymore, but he's seeing ghosts of the past, which is pretty cool. Which is cool. And I wish to posit that these Laika movies, Coraline, this, a little bit Kubo, not so much The Missing Link, but these movies are horror movies for children. Like they are akin to the dark fantasies of our childhood. They have enough maturity to them that they could be potentially frightening to a child at times, with enough humor and levity to redirect that energy. Once it's maybe too much for a small kid to handle, they can then bounce back by having something goofy happen. But I mean, it's even making references to slasher films from our youth, like the Halloween reference with him by the hedges. Even the writing on lockers is something you see a lot in horror movies, or the movies where people are being bullied. And then not to mention like the horrific nature of seeing your friends' faces transform into like creepy pilgrims.
Absolutely.
That's scary.
It is chock full of like macabre visions and like even the subject matter of dead people. There's grown adults that supposedly are allowed to vote who get squeamish towards these things being pretend, and here it is in a kids movie. But that's a good point. It's almost like modern day grim fairy tale,
Yeah.
in a sense, and a testament that like there will always be an element of this where inherently all our lives will be fascinated by these things because it's dark and mysterious, and we are curious people, and we'll be curious about this stuff, about the dark woods and what goes on in the graves at night and all that kind of stuff.
And they keep
And I say, oh, go ahead.
I was just going to say this movie keeps changing your expectations because it doesn't follow the regular sort of arc that a movie like this normally does. As I mentioned before, like this movie could easily have just been like a pretty basic concept, but they keep doing little twists throughout it. And we get our first real like lesson coming up here where Norman's like, I can't deal with you people. And also I just saw the past, and Neil catches up to him and they have a really frank conversation about how like, you know, you're going to get bullied in life. It's a part of life. It's survival of the fittest, essentially. And I don't care.
If you were bigger and stupider, you would be a bully,
Exactly.
probably too.
And I don't care what people think about me. And Norman, you shouldn't as well, because, you know, we don't know it yet, but he has an amazing gift, first and foremost. But I think that one of the lessons and one of the themes of this movie, like you said, Tim, at the beginning of the show, like it is very much about how to deal with bullying, which I think as an adult we can sort of identify with, because we all have workplaces we work in. We all work with,
Not me.
You have
Yet.
and you will, but we've
Yeah.
all dealt with strangers who are just trying to like, you know, use you at your expense so they can get over.
Yeah.
Around
Some of them
other
want to use
people.
you.
And
Some of them want to be used by you.
Exactly.
Some of them want to abuse you. Some of them want to be abused.
Sweet dreams are made of these. Here on Hey, did you see this one? Then we get we're the uncle finally catches up with them. We get a funny line from Neil, who's like, "That statue just pissed at us," which I actually laughed at.
That was so funny, because I couldn't remember. I haven't seen this in years, but I do own it on Blu-ray. It's a really nice Blu-ray too. It's a green case and like just kind of stands out on your bookshelf, and you're like, ooh, ParaNorman, gotta watch that. But it has lots of good special features too. But I had kind of forgotten all of those little micro jokes that are there for the adults, right? Like the pissed joke is going to be funny to kids, but that's also very funny to an adult. Like that statue just pissed at us is so funny. Like I don't think the word piss will ever not be funny to me, but you know,
Piss is a funny
maybe one day.
word. When people, I had a friend when I was going to wrestling school who they kind of subverted my expectations. They'd say piss all the time. They, you know what I mean? Like that was just one of those swear words that they peppered in, and you would always catch me off guard. And it is funny. It also like that South Park episode where the Tourette's guy is like, piss out my ass.
Piss coming out of my ass.
Yeah, piss out my ass. That shit's funny. They also call him Neil. Norman's like, I know that guy. He's from around here, and Neil's like, the smelly old bum who lives up the hill. I can't remember the whole phrasing of that, but that was also a funny way to put that. And basically, what's the name of the uncle? Mr. Pendergrass or something like that? Pendergast?
Yeah. Something like that.
He's basically like...
Mr. Pendergast, yeah.
Pendergast. He's basically like, you know, Norm, I know about your ability. There's a witch's curse. You have to basically save the world. Oh, another person I thought it was at first was George Carlin, because he kind of sounded like George Carlin a little bit at first, but... I think George Carlin was already dead when this movie came out. Point. Yeah, I think he died.
But that being said, these movies take like 4 years to make. So yeah, exactly. These movies take like 4 years to make, so it's possible. And they do the audio recording before the movies come out. Yeah. I think what's her name? Lord of the Rings. She's the
Liv Tyler?
No, the main elf, the best elf.
Oh, Cate Blanchett?
Cate Blanchett. She was in the Pinocchio Guillermo del Toro movie that came out last year, and she was like, I recorded that like 10 years ago. I forgot that I was in it. Another Guillermo del Toro movie came out already that I'm in.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
And multiple fucking Marvel movies. I guess she's only really in that one, but she's all over the What If show, the second season. Norman's basically like, also, that's my uncle, referring to Mr. Pendergrass. And they go to the backyard. We get kind of a mix of a heartbreak and also it's like heartbreaking and uplifting, dark and uplifting all the time through this movie. And he's like, is my dog here? My dog's buried back here. Is he here? And Norman sees the dog. It's fucking cut in half because it got hit by
It's
a
also
car.
funny because the way the dog died is he got run over by an animal rescue vehicle. They're both tragic and ironic. Yeah.
Yeah, I was like, that's a lot. That's one of those things that, like, as a kid, it might fuck you up a little bit. It might freak you out. But as an adult, you're watching that going, should my kid be watching this? That's crazy.
I don't know. I feel so. I was kind of a weirdo when I was a kid, and I liked shit like this. Yeah. So I think I've told the story before on the podcast, but I asked for The Nightmare Before Christmas for Christmas. I got it, put it on, and all of my cousins ran away because it was too frightening for them. And I was like, "This is Halloween, Halloween!" Like dancing around the basement.
I got it that year for Christmas as well, but I was a couple of years older. And
yeah, but I mean, I loved it, and
Yeah.
like it's gross and weird and scary, yes, but you know. That's the kind of stuff that I liked when I was a kid. I was like, every day is Halloween when I was a child. Like I would open up the Halloween costume box all the time and just like dress up like Dracula and be running around my house like blah 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 blah.
And I've talked about how I couldn't handle gore and horror, especially at that time. But like Mortal Kombat, for some reason, was my favorite shit.
See, this is the thing. I wasn't allowed to do any of that shit because my mom would see it on the news, being like, "Don't let your kids watch The Simpsons and don't let them play Mortal Kombat." And my mom would be like, "Mortal Kombat, no Simpsons," and I'm running around being like, "I'm gonna drain you of all your blood."
We're introduced to Mitch, Neil's older brother, who is Casey Affleck, who I should have known because he's got a pretty prominent voice. But he kind of plays a doofus musclehead. He's working on his van. And Neil, through all this, wants to teach Norman how to not be such a loner. And Norman's like, I want to be alone.
Yeah, I love being by myself. Yeah.
We get a really great sequence too where the uncle dies, but his ghost like goes out of his body and then goes back in. He's like, "Ha, I survived," and then dies again. And then
it's a good sight gag. He's like, "Not yet. I will not be killed yet." I kind of would have liked that second death to be a little bit quicker, like for the spirit to come out. Like maybe the body falls over and the spirit's still standing there. Like, damn it. I feel like the gag could have been a little bit cleaner, but it was still good.
It was still good. And they spent all the time to animate that. Like, just let them cook, you know?
Yeah. I did want to say that the part where Neil is trying to get him to throw the stick kind of really resonated with me because I was one of those kids where when other kids were trying to get me to do stuff, I'd be like, "No, I don't want to. I don't want to. No, I don't want to." And even still today, I'm kind of like that sometimes, unless it's like something that I know I should do. I'm like, "No, I don't want to. Just leave me alone." Nowadays, I'll be like, "Fuck off." I said no. No means no, motherfucker. Get away from me. But as a kid, you get sort of stressed out by trying things or doing things or
kind of like
not wanting
to
do things.
With board games. When people are like busting out a board game and they're like, "Come learn all these rules." I'm like,
that's a little bit different than throwing a stick.
True.
Yeah.
True. I like to sit.
What's the rules of stick?
Throw. Nope. Too much.
What am I supposed to do here?
Too many rules.
No, but it's not, because I understood the feeling that he had was it's not that he didn't want to do it. It's that he doesn't want to be included because he's scared that he's going to fuck it up somehow.
It's a big vulnerability issue.
Yeah, it's not because he doesn't want to or that he doesn't want to disappoint the other person so much as that he doesn't want to fail at the thing that he's trying to do, because it seems to me that a lot of the stuff in his life he automatically has either failed at, or the things that he's good at he's being told are odd and strange and that he shouldn't do those things. So it can have some pretty harsh effects on a child's mind, right? If they're constantly being chastised by something that a lot of people would consider to be a gift, right?
Yeah, we go to the Witch's Curse play now, which it's like has a bunch of funny moments. Like they're just poorly singing "Season of the Witch," which I thought was funny.
Which
I'm
the
like, what does this
trailer
have
for this
to do
movie-
with any of this?
I don't know if you've seen the trailer for this movie, but it is cut to Season of the Witch, and
Okay.
it's very, very good. And I rewatched the trailer a few years ago. I can't remember why. I think I was just asking somebody if they'd ever seen it. So I was like, here, watch the trailer. And I run D&D all the time, and I started listening to Season of the Witch after that, and it like spawned an entire D&D arc just based off of watching the ParaNorman trailer. I was like, you know what? We got to do some witches, and we're going to use this song, and every version of it, every cover of it is going to be all over this D&D campaign for the next 2 months.
Which is
and
great.
it was good.
It's a classic hippie song from the 60s.
But speaking of witches, the town this takes place in, this is somewhat like a version of Salem, Massachusetts, because I think it takes place in Massachusetts, right?
Yeah, but
And the fact that like the town has like franchised the idea of witchcraft and witches in the town, that they make it into their economy and their local culture.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
It's weird. It's funny you say that because I was just listening for them to say Salem, because at one point they're talking about and they say the name and it's some name that's not a real place.
I think it's just easier, right? And you can make up something pretty easily rather than have to worry about running into actual history. So it's like, we want to make this story up. Let's just make up a place. But even the teacher, when she's talking about the play, the little girl is like, this is not historically accurate. And the teacher's like, it's not supposed to be. It's supposed to sell postcards and t-shirts. And you're like, okay, so they're just really playing into the green face, big nose, big hat kind of witches.
Yeah, because the
Gruntilda witch.
Because she does have like that face stuff on in that first scene in the beginning. After they sing the song, the witch was basically like, I damn you all to hell. And an owl flies down and lands on Neil, and then the fabric of space and time starts to crackle again. And Norman is now fully in the past, and the dead are coming for him. I think that they're dead. They're the dead at this point. They're not like the people yet, or like, because later in the movie we get to see what actually happened, or they're calling him a witch because we don't see the full scene.
They're chasing him through the woods,
right?
And we are then later in the movie, we realize that he's actually reliving the little girl's actual experience. He's being chased, but it's actually her that's being chased.
Yeah, and he kind of comes to Neil standing over him like, what's going on, bud? Freaking out. And he freaks out further. He's like, the dead are coming to get us. And the
teacher's like, that's not in the script, but it's pretty good. I like this. And then he's like, did he just say the dead are coming? And his dad's like, no, he didn't say that. And then Norman's like, he did. The tree told me. And then everybody looks to Neil, who's like dressed like a fucking tree.
And then unfortunately the dad is a huge naysayer and reprimands him driving home.
Well, the dad is one of those really shitty parents who care more about the perception, the perceived home life of him and his family than he does about the well-being of his family, which is not great. It's not great when you care more about what people think of your family than actually like what your family is experiencing. You're a bad dad. That's not a good dad.
So I do have a little bit of a little caveat here.
That's when they said the name of the movie in the movie.
So,
oh no,
they don't actually say the name of the movie in the movie. They don't ever say ParaNorman. They say Norman a whole lot of times, but
wait, you're telling me they say Norman, the name of the character?
But as he's walking to school the next day, he's being called a bunch of names, and they got pretty close. Somebody says, "Ad Norman," like Ad Normal. That's the closest they get.
Isn't it abnormal?
Abnorman, sorry.
Okay.
That's what I meant to say. This
like,
one
beer. There have been times in my life where I'm like, have I been saying something wrong my entire life?
Yeah, it's abnormal. Duh. And that's when we get the great scene where he's in the bathroom in the stall talking to the ghost of his uncle now, and Alvin's in the stall next to him. And it kind of reminded me of the scene in Austin Powers. Like, who does number 2 work for? But instead of
I
that,
assume any scene in a movie where someone's in a toilet stall reminds you of that scene. Then
it was very funny to me when I was fucking 15. But the thing that's great about this is Alvin comes out of the stall and he's like, come out of there. Like, what are you doing in there? After the uncle like explains all the stuff, you got to come find me and read my book to the.
Isn't he just like weirdly spying on him? He's not telling him to come out of there. He's just like listening to what's going on.
Yeah.
Which is
right.
weirder than telling him to come out. Like listening to somebody in a toilet stall is very strange.
But then the whole thing explodes. So it's like the joke is kind of that he took a massive dump that caused the whole, and because Norman's even like,
I don't think
go in
even
there for a
Alvin,
while.
as dumb as he is, truly thinks that ParaNorman took a paranormal dump that caused a fucking shockwave throughout the hall of the school.
I don't know. Alvin's pretty dumb.
That X-Files with that paranormal dump.
But then ParaNorman does get that quick Ace Ventura line in where he's like, "Do not go in there," and then waves it. I think he says you're gonna want to give that a couple minutes. Yeah.
It's clearly just exploded.
It's the same joke. Yeah.
He's essentially the uncle essentially tells him that the anniversary of the witch's death is coming. Every year you have to like read the story.
But this is the 100th year, is not?
Yeah, classic. Don't tell John Carpenter, or he'll come and make this movie. Also, I think this.
Oh man, I would love to see John Carpenter's ParaNorman.
Yeah, which is great. And during this sequence, Norman sort of gets pulled into like a fantasy realm again, where his uncle is making these like toilet paper ghost monsters, which fucking looked so cool.
I had those in the trailer, but I knew I was going to send it to you beforehand, Jason, and I was like, Jason's going to love these toilet ghosts. So I'm going to not put this into the.
Oh, really?
I don't want to spoil toilet ghosts for Jason.
That should go right to TikTok. Jason's going to love these toilet ghosts.
You know me so well, Steve.
I knew that you wouldn't want to see Flaming Car, and I knew that you would want to see toilet ghosts IRL and not have to see it ruined for you.
I said to you after I watched that trailer for the beginning of our show, the little moments in Kubo, that movie's gonna change my life. Is what I feel.
I didn't use anything past like the first maybe half an hour of Kubo
because I don't want to know anything about that until I watch.
There is one thing I use that I'm like, this is too sick, and I love it so much I'm putting it in. I don't give a shit. It's when the monkey's jumping around. I'm like, monkey's cool. I love monkey.
Really cool.
Yeah.
So he tells him to find his real body, which is still in the house, and read from the book and go to the spot where the witch is buried. I wrote down, do I look crazy to you? I assume that was just the uncle saying that, and he looks insane. I can't remember why I wrote that.
He's got a crazy look on his face. His eye is like twitching.
Do I look crazy?
Looks...
Yeah.
I don't know if you guys noticed this detail. This is like a Toronto Transit Commission thing to see, and it's super sad. But the foot that's wrapped in a bag on the uncle. Did you see that? Did you notice that one of his feet is actually not in a shoe? It's just wrapped in a bag. I was like, that's a very specific detail to glean from real life to put into this movie.
It's interesting you say that because that disease, which you see on unhoused people a lot. I had that wound on my ankle. And I know that if you don't get it treated, it festers real bad because it's a varicose vein situation where essentially a wound opens and it can't be closed without medical intervention. It's not like you can just like wrap it. And I had to go to a doctor for once a month for like a year and get this special, it's not quite a cast. It's like, it gets, anyway, it's a lot of details for something. But the thing is when I see people on the streets, and now that I'm watching these, the Channel 5 Andrew Callahan guy, he's going into these places where there's a lot of drug use. Mine wasn't from drug use. Mine was from working in kitchens and not treating a varicose vein issue. But people are getting these like wounds that are festering. So what probably happened with the uncle, and it's really interesting that they put this detail in, is that he just refused to go to the doctor and get it fixed, That's kind of what happened with me. I was like, whatever, it'll be fine. What ended up happening with me is I developed a intolerance to polysporin. So like if I cut myself and put polysporin on it, it gets infected because of my body. I put so much polysporin into this wound that anyway, this is a comedy podcast, not a fucking my whole
Guys, this is grossing me out.
Sorry, but yes, Tim, thank you for pointing that out. It's really interesting to me specifically because I feel for the people who
I just thought he didn't have a shoe. I didn't know that this was
shit.
Sorry.
How about this line?
But
He's like, "Swear to me that you're gonna do this," and Norman's like, "What? Like the F word?"
yeah.
I wrote so endearing. Tim, what were you gonna say there?
I was just gonna say that the details in the Uncle Prendergast's home are very, very interesting. That like you see like the stack of books everywhere, and the obsessive wall with all the circles and the pins and everything, and how well it serves. I mean, I don't want to jump ahead again.
Oh,
Yeah, plot later on of his manic handling of it lends to the confusion for what they have to motivate through to get to understanding what he was actually doing the whole time.
right.
And what he meant, what he was telling him, you got to find the book.
Yeah. And the reason he exploded, I have it written down here in The Explosion Happens, is because he was able to finish his post-life quest. Like you know, the old trope that like if you're turned into a ghost, you still walk the earth because you have an unfinished business. And his unfinished business, I guess, was to tell Norman what he needs to do, which I thought was great. But I like the idea of these ghosts explode catastrophically when they're done. That's fun. And why did I write down "ow my boobs"?
Oh, because Alvin says, if you don't tell me where Norman went, I'm gonna punch you in your boobs.
Oh, yeah.
And then he goes, I don't have boobs. I have pectoral muscles.
Right.
And then he punches them and he
Neil.
goes, ow, my boobs. Which is a funny joke. But
So-
I also liked that he had a list of all the reasons that he is bullied. And it wasn't, just for being fat, which is like, kind of a shitty reason to bully anybody at the best of times and the worst of times. But allergies and he had irritable bowel syndrome. I'm like, oh man, I'm real high on the list of things that Neil has. I've got all these things.
But it suits that like he like has all of the other stereotypical things that bullies would bully people over, whereas Norman has like these very
specific thing, which is like he talks to ghosts, like a thing that nobody else would ever have. Yeah,
but there's a bit of equilibrium between the two for that.
Yeah. We get the reveal. It's not really a reveal, I guess, but Norman's at home now, playing with his action figures or whatever he does. His phone rings. It's the Halloween theme, which is great. And he looks out the window, and it's a shot from Halloween of Neil standing by like the
laundry
sheets. Laundry. Yeah,
which is a shot from Halloween. But he's wearing a Freddy mask or a Friday the 13th mask, Jason hockey mask, which I thought was great. And also, Grandma shows up to give him a pep talk.
Also, he lifts up the mask and he goes, "You want to play hockey?" That's funny, man.
And for him, it's perfectly innocent. Yeah,
but he's standing there so creepily, like with his arms kind of like spread wide. He's got his like shoulders and feet spread wide. It's so funny. Yeah.
It kind of reminded me of a Simpsons gag a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like, hey Bart, you want to check out my new hockey mask and chainsaw?
Yeah. A lot of the sensibilities in this comedically were very sort of like 90s era Simpsons, where the joke is there, but then the joke is doubled down upon, where they do like the joke on top of a joke on top of a joke, and it usually works, but in this movie it works pretty nicely. Like I don't think there are too many jokes in this movie that failed for me. Even like the butt coming out of the ground, like the zombie butt, and all the zombies are coming up, and like the one zombie comes up butt first. I'm like, you know what? I like it. I like it. Yeah.
The grandma shows up to give him a pep talk about basically like being a loner, and reveals that her duty, or the reason why she stuck around, is to watch over Norman. And Norman basically goes to do the goes to do his duty, which is go up to the uncle's house. We get that great scene that we saw in the opening of Elvin breakdancing, which is, for some reason I was like, yeah, bullies breakdance. And it's just him breakdancing with his goon squad cheering him on.
Yeah, it's not like he's doing it to impress anybody except his weird friends.
Yeah, and Norman blasts through on his bike, like drives right through it. So naturally, Alvin's like, "What the fuck? Let's get him." And he makes it to the uncle's house. The place is disgusting. There's rats. There's a funny rat moment. There's a funny slug moment that comes out. We also the other thing, the thing that I didn't understand. There's also like he opens that thing and all the like moths fly out, but the moths are like the size of bats. So it was kind of both.
It's just good visual stuff.
When they cut to, what was the thing with the forks though? Like it was like a chandelier made of forks. Was it supposed to be a trap?
I think he's just crazy. I think his uncle is crazy. Like his uncle made that probably thinking it was a trap, but it's not really.
It's
not
like, really.
If anybody happens to be near this chandelier made of forks, they're gonna die.
Like, I don't think so, man.
So he finds the uncle. He reads the book. He's trying to. Oh, this fucking scene is so. This is like for adults and would make a child feel weird.
It felt like the scene from Drag Me to Hell, Sam Raimi's Drag Me to Hell, when she accidentally knocks the corpse out of the coffin and it like spills bile all over her and starts gumming her. And you're just like, "Ow!" Like it felt like that.
Essentially, though. It, like the body's rigor mortis, and he's trying to get the book out of its hands, but like the whole bunch of slapstick,
like crazy stuff happens. Like it falls on top of him, and then its tongue comes out and like licks his face. And you're like, oh no, Norman!
Yeah, it's like a slightly grosser version of Weekend at Bernie's kind of thing.
Yeah. I mean. Yeah, it falls somewhere in between Drag Me to Hell and Weekend at Bernie's. It's the ParaNorman part, yeah.
Yeah.
I do want to do Drag Me to Hell in this show at some point because I feel like it is one of those movies that not a lot of people have seen, but it's got some wild stuff in it that is reminiscent.
It's a great Raimi.
We have a non-sequels grimoire coming up.
It's a little problematic nowadays, but I think if you can kind of take a deep breath and just look past the horrible use of the word gypsy over and over again.
Jesus Christ.
Yeah.
Make a cut where we censor it and put in Roma.
Well, I mean, it's just...
But it's still offensive because...
It's like they're using the culture as like a mystical thing where it's like they put curses on you. Oh, it's an evil Romanian curse.
He bashes the head off stuff. He gets stuck under the body, like you said, the tongue thing.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. Norman heads into the graveyard with the book that's fully grown over, which I thought I like this fully grown over. I like a fully grown over graveyard. I think it's a great aesthetic. I think it's more haunting to me than a regular graveyard because it's almost like a secret garden, but a haunted secret garden.
And it's isolated, which I don't know if you've ever come across like an isolated graveyard, but it is 10 times creepier than a regular graveyard. My friend, my friend, she used to live in this like sort of newer developed area, but it was like it was like a wealthy neighborhood, so there was only like 12 houses in the entire area, but they'd all been sort of recently built. And in and amongst that property was this like ancient graveyard. And you would go in there and it was like you couldn't even read the names on the tombstones and they're all overgrown, and it's just there's something spookier about it.
I love it. I love
a regular one. Yeah.
Where I grew up too, like there was this acre of land that like in the middle of a bunch of houses backyard.
I've been there when I went to your wedding. Our fucking Airbnb was right outside of that.
Yeah.
The graveyard in Halifax.
Oh, the graveyard. No. It wasn't a graveyard. But it was a place where like things had clearly happened. So I'd be like out on
the Murder Grove.
I'd be out on this acre and I'd find like an old weird fence that was like decrepit and like
with half a human skull on it. You're like, this is weird.
Yeah, but yeah, you definitely stayed next to an actual graveyard. The graveyards in Halifax, there's one graveyard in Halifax that is like the Titanic graveyard, which also has like a kind of grown-in feel to it. Even though it's like a public park, it's still got that.
Wait, it's the Titanic graveyard?
Yeah.
So there's no bodies there?
Well, there's
just markers for all the souls that were lost at sea.
True. That's a good point.
That's like the least scary graveyard ever. They're like, these are just a bunch of rocks with names on them.
I never put that together because I'm incredibly intelligent, but I'm not smart. But we see a circle of graves here. A circle of graves will always make me feel a particular way. And I guess you read from the book and it stops the curse, but he doesn't know why or how this is affected. And I think the book is what, Sleeping Beauty. So it's like, how
Once Upon a Time. Yeah.
And then I wrote, he's going to miss something and it's going to be game over. And you know what? I thought he was going to start reading an incantation and then Elvin was going to show up and interrupt it. And he was going to get, Spider-Man No Way Homed, but no, that's not what happens at all. He tries to read from the book. It's like dusk when he starts reading it. It becomes night. The dead rise, and basically Elvin and Norman are now in an undead nightmare situation.
Yeah.
Here comes the nightmare witch curse.
Dembala, give me the power, I beg of you. Ate Platu Nictu. He combines them all.
I thought it'd be funny if we did a new segment on this show. Maybe we get a sting for it. But much like the Home Alone of it all, we have a end credits scene where here it's like there was two versions of the end credits that I came up with. One is like he just reads the book and the curse gets lifted credits, and the other one was like the kids get eaten by the zombies credits.
Yeah, I think that, there's a lot of movies with zombies popping out of the ground, but this one really did it for me. I like the choice of camera angles, the crane work. Obviously it's different than traditional film, but it was very deliberate and cool. Yeah. Okay, guys, move it.
In a way, though, yeah.
It is basically a tiny crane, but it's a little bit. It's in so many ways much more difficult than a regular crane shot.
Yeah.
But the cracking earth, the lighting, and the funniness of it, where it's like, it is frightening. Like the music is very frightening. The ambiance is very frightening. And then they just like throw in these goofy gags where like the zombies are coming out feet first. And I'm like, you know what? If I was a zombie, maybe I would want to kick my way out first and my feet would pop out first. Maybe my butt would come out if I'm just like using my lower back to force open the coffin that I've been buried inside of. Who knows?
Yeah.
Instead of just hands. But the goofiness doesn't really throw you off of the creepiness as well, right? So you get a chuckle here and there, but then you're immediately thrown back into like, oh, I'm concerned for Alvin and for Norman. More so Alvin, because he seems like a main character who could potentially be eaten.
True.
Whereas we know ParaNorman's going to live.
Norman understands.
At least until the end.
Norman understands the dead. And they get out of there. They make it back to Neil's. The sister... over to Neil's because the sister is looking for Neil and Norman. Because during all of this too, I forgot to write this down, but Norman is supposed to be being babysat by Courtney, and she's like, "Don't you leave," and he immediately leaves.
Yeah.
So she's now looking because she's supposed to be babysitting while the parents are out, and she thinks Norman's there. Neil is there by himself. He's perving to aerobic videos. There's that funny scene where it's like, you better not be pausing the aerobics videos.
Yeah,
he's like, no.
I'm not.
And I'll let you guys in on a little secret. When I was that age, let's just say my mom had a lot of aerobics videos that I may or may not have done the same thing with.
Okay, so Jason is Neil. We've discovered now.
Neil, but I was skinny. I wasn't rotund. The brother answers the door and flirts with Courtney. They have a bit of a smitting.
He doesn't flirt with Courtney.
No, she flirts with him, but it felt like they were smitten a little bit.
He
He's just
is
the
gay.
You think he's gay?
He is gay.
Not...
Did you watch the movie, you scumbag? At the very end of the movie, it's not a theory, by the way. He says to her, "Oh, you're gonna love my boyfriend. He loves rom-coms and goofy stuff like that."
I fully missed that.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
So, and I now I don't know if this is 100% correct, but this is one of the first like feature-length major animated movies where it does have somebody that is just openly gay in it. Yeah,
and it's funny because the reason it works so well is because it's not mentioned at all until the very end. It's one of the last lines in the movie, and when you watch it again, knowing that, you're like, oh yeah, he has absolutely no interest in her whatsoever. Like it's so clear that he's just oblivious and being like, and you think, oh, he's just like an airhead or whatever, but like no, he just actually doesn't have any interest in her whatsoever and has a boyfriend that's somewhere else in the town. Yeah.
Yeah,
should have a different sting for this, for like dun 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 dun, facts.
When it's not headcanon, it's just revealed later in the movie to be the absolute truth. Yeah. But we do have like a horror squad now. We've got the brother Neil and the sister. Elvin and Norman make it back to the house. There were 7 victims. It's Sleeping Beauty that they're reading. So I wrote 7 dwarves, but that's not. Yeah, that's Sleeping Beauty. No, that's
Snow White, brothers.
Right. So it turns out
7 dwarves.
Sleeping Beauty just has 1 dwarf.
Yeah.
No, I'm just kidding.
Just the sleep kisser.
Yeah, the perv kisses you when you're sleeping. But Snow White also has that.
That's true.
Yeah.
Turns out they were reading the story in the wrong place, because he wasn't supposed to read the book at those 7 graves. He was supposed to read the book where the witch actually was buried. And witches in those days were treated as subhuman. They get buried in an unmarked grave. Now, have either of you played the game Earthbound?
Oh gosh, long time ago.
This town.
I was too stupid to play it.
I mean,
too busy dealing with ghosts.
You probably just couldn't, like, you probably was out at a time where you weren't like.
My mom thinks that I could see ghosts when I was a kid, by the way. But my mom believes in ghosts. I don't believe that ghosts are real, but she has told me some weird stories where I'm like, what? Apparently, I would just like be talking to people, and then I would come downstairs and be like, the boy in my room
Jonathan
told me
in the
that
closet said that I should come out of the closet.
Yeah, there was the boy and the man that lived in the house.
That's fucking crazy.
Yeah,
you do have an active imagination, and you're an artist, so maybe you were just,
I guess,
trolling.
Yeah. I don't know. I don't have any memory of the boy and the man, but apparently they existed.
That's crazy
for me.
The reason I bring up Earthbound is because this town reminds me of the third town is called Threed. In the Japanese version, it's called Threek. I don't know why they were like, oh, calling it Threek is too freaky. The reason why it's called that is because the first town's called One-It, the second town's called Tucson. It's basically 1, 2, 3, 4 side, on and on. Threed is a town that's been taken over by zombies. And when you go to that town, all of the people are holed up in a circus tent, and they act very similarly, where they're afraid of everything. They think Ness is a zombie. They think the zombies are coming. It's a whole thing, though. But I just wanted to bring that up because there were a lot of similarities here in the vibe of a town being taken over by literally a small amount of zombies. There were no real rules for these zombies. In fact, right when they get to the point in this movie, as we're going to get to here in a second, where you would normally get the rules for the zombies. The rules for the zombies are that we don't find out the rules. We don't find out if they bite people, you turn into a zombie.
Well, they're not zombies. They're not like normal zombies. That's what's so funny about this movie is that the townspeople are the zombies at the end of the day, right? Where like there's literally a scene where the zombies are held up in a house, scared for their lives, as human beings are like their arms are busting through walls and stuff.
Yeah,
it's like
that was great.
A reverse
that was really
movie.
good.
Yeah, and it's so fun, and I'm sure this has been done somewhere else before because it's it seems like a very obvious thing to do in order to subvert the expectations of a zombie movie, to have the humans being the zombies. But visually it's so fun, and the zombies being horrified, like when they first get to the town and they see that the town has changed so much, and they're like horrified by television and people just eating snack foods and stuff. They're like, oh, it's great. It's so good.
Um, they're in the car. They're trying to go find Norman. Courtney won't shut up. I've never
Courtney
used
won't shut up.
deltoids in my life.
Jesus.
It's a funny line. No, but she's just talking a mile a minute, and she has that thing where she like won't believe anything even after seeing things. You know.
Yeah.
They almost hit Norman and Elvin, and they smoke a zombie. They do the go to check the body trope, and I wrote, "Don't get bit." He doesn't.
Jason's watching this with like Walking Dead rules.
I
Being like,
was.
club his head, club him in the head, destroy the brain.
Destroy the brain. I'm glad they didn't destroy the brain, because who knows what would happen to the ghosts later. The brother football punts the head, which I thought was great. And they drive off, but a zombie grabs on. We're introduced to the police officer, who sucks. Who's just like the worst police officer ever.
I think the car chase, or not chase, but car sequence is probably one of the most fun bits in the entire movie. It has several chuckles, like several moments where I was giggling to myself.
It's that chaos thing that I love in movies, when there's just like one crazy thing happening after another, and it's all so unhinged.
But it's just the Looney Tunes shot composition and like the comedic sensibility of all of it is so high tier for me personally. Like the zombies, you know, it's like a static shot of all the other zombies, and their heads are moving slowly, and they're all kind of like groaning, and then it cuts to the other zombie on the back of the van, like terrified, screaming for his life. But he's like staring at them, like, "Help me! Like, help me, please!"
I had made a note that the zombies are actually really like interesting to look at. They were just animated so cool, and they just had a different.
They all had something weird going on with them. Like there's the tall one with the broad shoulders who has like a lip that's dangling and kind of always moving. All of them had something interesting. There's the one with the teeth where it almost looks sort of like a bird crocodile.
The big like square zombie was pretty cool. Who's just like
I think they did a really good job of the main characters in this movie for the humans, but they did just as good for the zombies themselves. And I remember the first time I saw this, I was kind of like disappointed by the zombies when I first saw them. I was like, these zombies are just kind of whatever, standard zombies. But as the movie goes and you start to understand what they are, you realize that all those specific sort of traits that have been given to them are there for comedic timing, and then later on for a point of reference for you to feel bad for them, where you're like, oh man, the emotion is really coming out on the lip guy right now. Look how sad he looks.
The lip one especially, because its lips are hanging below off the jaw. Like when I first noticed that, I thought like I was just kind of took a moment at that point in the movie to kind of absorb the amount of creativity with how individually interesting everything is. You know, like at every moment that like in general for the movie anyway, like every frame is a feast for the eyes, because there's so much going on, and you can get so much from rewatching over and over again, especially during that chase scene to catch all the different jokes that are overlapping each other as well.
There's so many good little, like there's a joke here where they right before they zoom by, she's just talking on the phone and she sees the sky's all fucked, because throughout this whole sequence the sky is like swirling and becoming more and more like, it hasn't gone full witch face, but it's like clearly purple and swirly, kind of like when in Ghostbusters when the sky starts to get weird. And she goes, the sky's changing because the kids are using up all the bandwidth with their cell phones.
Yeah, just blaming it on Wi-Fi somehow.
Pesky kids.
Yeah.
And that's when they zoom by, and she's on a moped, which I thought was also like dumb and funny. Like she's trying to chase this.
The police department doesn't have that much money, but there's like the moment where they're rolling down the hill as well, and it cuts to the interior of a house where two people are just like drinking wine together as the car is rolling down the hill.
That part was really good.
And it's just like, they're not saying anything. They're both just going, oh. And it's long enough that you know that they could have had some sort of dialogue, but they don't. They're just like stupidly giggling to one another. Like one of them just told the worst joke, and you don't know what it is, but you know it wasn't that funny. They're both fake laughing, basically, and
Yeah.
it's so good.
They
That's
do
why
a couple of
I
ducks on the
think
date.
I think gold star of this movie is that entire card sequence because like there's so many parts in it that just make me laugh every time.
And it doesn't drag on really. It's like
No, and it's not that long, but it's chock full. Like it is rammed full with of like
Yeah.
funny little bits. Yeah.
Yeah,
The,
without overstaying its welcome.
no, yeah, exactly. They do manage to call the I mentioned this earlier, so I won't stay on it too hard, but they do call the girl who I thought was gonna have more of an effect on the party, but that's when they tell them that basically you have to go to the town hall because you have to find out where the witch is buried, because they don't bury witches in a marked grave because they weren't considered people. I already talked about that. So they race. They're back in the town. They're racing by. They race by the parents. The police officer crashes her moped into the car, and that's when they roll. They crash and roll down the hill for like, I say way too long, but I don't mean it went on for too long. It's just hilarious. They end up careening down this hill and rolling, and then they land perfectly in the parking spot of an auto body shop.
I just looked up the voice of that girl because I was like, is it anybody? And then I looked a picture of her up and I was like, she looks so familiar. And she is the little girl in the Silent Hill movie.
Oh,
That's a weird sort of like kind of, I mean, it's obviously not like a huge connection, but the fact that this movie has so many Silent Hill elements to it is kind of cool.
Silent Hill came out at around the same time, like maybe 2008, 2009,
2006.
2006.
Yeah. She was also in that movie where they're in a cabin in the woods. Cabin in the Woods. I was like, what is it called? Yeah, she was in a lot of horror movies. She was also in BioShock 2. She did some voices.
Is she the little sister from BioShock 2?
She is, yeah.
Crazy. We get it. Okay, so in my head, I don't know. I completely missed the line at the end about the Casey Affleck character being gay, but we get the old like, oh, I can't believe that you're hurt. I hope that you're okay. And Courtney's like, oh my god, he thinks and he storms right past her and like goes up to the van.
That's the part where he says, "You're gonna love my boyfriend."
Oh, okay. I don't know.
I can't believe you missed that. It was like the best. The date that I was on was with a guy, so it was like we were both like, yeah, high-fived each other.
You high-fived and then sorry, that's too much.
Exactly. We started blowing each other in the theater full of children.
Sorry. I realized almost immediately what I was insinuating. Then we just and then the truck, the van like breaks down fully. He starts breaking down. And we get a side cut to a man at a vending machine who just wants his greasy bits. There's a bunch of like noticeably similar to real products in the machine. It's funny because I was cutting around I was cutting clips out of our Castaway episode, so I was listening to us talk about product placement. But this does the thing where it's fake products. There's like a Crunchy bar clearly, but it's like labeled differently.
Yeah.
But he's just trying to get it. They're called greasy bits or greasy chunks or something. So
something like that, yeah.
And we get a weird, like, the zombies are, like, lumbering towards him, but the bag's at the very back of the machine, and it's rolling forward in that, like, the coil.
Yeah, that's a spiral, yeah.
I thought it was a really funny, like, way to do a little countdown. And it's funny because he's like, and he runs away, and they finish falling, and he's still going, and he runs back and grabs them and runs away. I just thought that was funny. That's when the zombies round the corner and see the modern horrors. They see the people coming to the strip club. I think they had already seen the billboard of like the witch casino. Yeah, they see the sign for the Lucky Witch Casino. They see all the modern things like spray paint, a guy spray painting his skull, the TV. They freak out, and then when they walk out, they subvert our expectations because the humans freak out a bit. They're like, "Oh my god, humans!" and then a woman just pulls out a shotgun. She's like, "We're
Yeah.
knock if you buck, buddy." And yeah, it's interesting that the humans just fight back immediately. You never see that. In fact, when I love zombie movies and TV shows, but in my head, I'm like, there's so many moments where I'm like, especially like The Walking Dead, there's a midpoint where like they've been in it for so long. How do they still fear these slow ass zombies? I get that
Fear the Walking Dead.
Yeah. I get that the hordes can be intimidating if they just like suddenly overtake you. But like there is a moment before they become like certified zombie killers where they're still freaked out by like a couple of zombies.
I mean, I think that a walking corpse would never not get scary to me anyway. Somebody coming at me with their skin hanging off and their brain hanging out of their head. Who wants?
I certainly wouldn't want
me?
them to touch me. Yeah.
And I will say that I know
they probably
that
smell bad, like really, really bad.
there's a Walking Dead show that's sort of like a CW high school show that takes place 20 years after day one, and the zombies are treated like a comedic afterthought. So maybe
Walking
I
Dead
don't.
Junior high.
It's like it's like they're in high school, and there's one.
It's
season,
young Rick Grimes. He's like, I hate zombies. Carl.
No,
I named my son Carl one day.
it's like a group of outcasts at like a high school in the future that the world is just basically fine, but there's still zombies around.
That sounds terrible.
It sucked. I watched one. I love The Walking Dead, but all of the spin-offs
like
are
High School
awful.
Musical, but with zombies. You know, it's like the grassy but zombies guy.
That might have been what they were going for. Like the one girl gets pregnant and she gives birth to a zombie.
Are they like teaching them? Is it like school? Like they have to go to class? And
Yeah, it was like a high school drama.
That sounds like
And
the worst
there's
fucking
just
thing I've ever
scenes
heard about.
whenever they showed zombies
so
in
bad.
it was just
We're learning about American history. Why?
Yeah.
The fucking world has been devoured by zombies.
And
Who gives a
rebuilt.
shit?
Yeah, it was terrible. I just remember there was a scene of like that was played for comedy where there was like kind of like a small horde of zombies and the military just comes and just like steamrolls them. Just kill.
Why didn't you do your calculus homework, Jimothy? My dog got eaten by a zombie, and then the zombie also ate my homework.
the dog didn't eat my homework. The zombie ate my dog and then ate my homework. Sorry to just re-say your joke, but I wanted to make sure you were clear.
That's what I said. Yeah.
I liked your thing better than where my head went. Tim liked that one.
Yeah. Tim liked it both times, but the combo of both made it even funnier.
Yeah.
I got to enjoy it twice, just like this movie.
The parents and the police arrive to find the fucking humans just shooting their guns at things like the zombies aren't even really around. And then we got some anti-propaganda where the cop's like, don't just shoot your gun wildly. That's for the police to do. And I was like, high five to this movie.
In 2012 to make that joke
in 2012, yeah. Where people kind of still liked the police a little, I think.
Mm-hmm.
I think ACAB has been around for a while, but I think people were still like, oh, police are bad.
Police are bad. Zombies make it to the town hall, and the humans are going nuts with the theater teacher leading them. And when they're in the town hall, all of these dumb teenagers are like, we don't know what to do. And Norman's like, I don't have the brain capacity to deal with all you. And Neil's like, I'll help. I'm going to read this book. And the book is asbestos and asbestos and what to do with it. And he opens it and he goes, okay, page 1. This is page 1. You know, Casey Affleck can't even fucking read. It seems like Elvin can't read.
He starts doing like exercises with the thick books.
Yes.
That's the first instinct he has, is just to exercise.
Courtney still does not believe that any of this is possible, and Courtney still during this, Courtney still calls Norman a freak, and says that he has to live in the real world, and then you have to just be like, all of these things are literally happening.
Yeah, can you not see the zombies, man?
Mm.
Yeah.
But I mean, she semi redeems herself by the end. I think that there's this really heart-wrenching moment near the end of the movie, but she has nothing to do with it. Her turn does not really in any way make me feel human feelings, but
No.
everything leading up to Norman both succeeding on his quest and being in that sort of hell world is it's beautiful.
Mhm.
We're almost there.
We're almost there.
Mhm.
So it kind of becomes a situation where they leave the room, leave Norman by himself in the library, and now we get a sort of almost M. Night Shyamalanian twist.
Shyamalanian.
Shyamalanian, not really. I'm being hyperbolic. However, the humans are trying to get into this building because they're like, the zombies are in there, and they're like smashing their hands through the windows, and it's very very zombie aesthetic, which
They're in there all right. I can feel their clammy flesh.
Yeah,
Just,
it grabs
grab
that in my face.
Yeah.
And they're acting like the Horde. And I thought
They
it was
are
a
the
great
Horde.
subversion.
Yeah, it's one of those things. It's very surface level, but it also works so well, and it's fun and smart. And I can't really think of an example off the top of my head, at least a mainstream example that has done that before, where they literally have zombies being attacked like humans, where the zombies are fearing for their lives as though they are being attacked by zombies. Like, it's pretty funny.
That's the big turn of the movie here, where it's like they do kind of a double turn where the humans are now bad and the zombies are good, and you feel bad for the zombies. And this is even before they explain their case, really. Because what kind of happens here is, as they're being like a horde outside, the zombies sort of corner Norman in the library. And
to be clear, I don't want to say that, like, I've never seen a movie where a horde of humans is depicted as a monster before when they're hunting a monster. That's been done 1 billion times. I'm talking very specifically about a horde of human beings being shot and captured as though they are zombies with their hands coming in going,
the closest I could remember that we've done specifically was Halloween 4, where there's that roving band of like idiots who shoot one of their own.
Yeah, I mean, or even Assault on Precinct 13, it has a zombie feel to it, but I'm talking specifically zombies being hunted as though the humans are zombies. It's very funny.
With like Dutch angles on them and everything
exactly.
as it zooms in on them and they're leaning to grab.
Yeah. So the zombies sort of corner Norman in the library. He runs out. He climbs to the roof. He climbs to the tower on top of the roof. He pulls out the book and he tries to start reading it. The witch face is now a full witch face. I thought it looked so friggin' cool. And then he gets blasted to the past, and he sees the people who are the zombies, and he gets sentenced as a witch. But then he gets
sentenced by the zombies who are now humans.
Right.
It's like a tribunal of these pilgrims, I suppose, these settlers, these religious Puritans who have decided that you're a witch, and they're talking to him, and then he kind of steps to the side and sees a girl who looks exactly like him.
Yeah.
So I'm like, oh, is this one of his ancestors or something? Well, yeah, it's like the same model almost.
And also, then once again, she has hexagonal eyes, just like Norman and Mr. Pendergrast. Where this is, I almost got implied bloodline because I'm not too sure if they mention her name, her full name. I don't think
so, but it's very clear. It's very clear to me that they're meant to be related.
Yeah,
they look
like
there's a connection to them. Yeah. But like to have this kind of view of the world where they can see these other things, so they have that distinct look in their eyes.
She's being literally burned at the stake for witchcraft, which is probably the same thing that it's a more extreme version of what's happening to ParaNorman. And she probably just had ghost seeing powers. She probably is like, your mom wants you to eat more broccoli to like some kid in the schoolyard. And it's like,
she's a witch. My mom's dead.
What she's saying during that is she's like, I didn't mean to do it. I was just playing a game.
Yeah.
And then I don't know if we're supposed to see it as the reality of the situation, but when she bursts into lightning right there, like, was that her power? And then they survived and then burned her at the stake. That whole little moment is kind of unclear to me.
I assume because they probably can't show a lot of stuff that they probably scripted all this stuff and they're like, we can't show this. This is too fucked. So it's probably a thing where they sentenced her to be hanged or burned or whatever. I assume burned because she has like these elemental powers. And she probably cursed them before she was killed. And that's why they're not able to rest, right? So they've been put to rest when they die, but they can't die fully because she put a curse on them. So she does have witch powers. She is a witch, but she's only evil because they made her that way.
Okay. Yeah.
It's the whole sort of like thesis of the movie is like bullying creates monsters, and
Which is true.
Yeah.
this is what happened.
The zombies essentially, when he kind of pops out of it and he's like, why did you do this? They tell him that they were scared just like he's scared of them. And when people are scared, they do extreme things. And he basically they basically tell him that he needs to stop the curse. And the reason it's a storybook is because the uncle was reading the storybook to the grave every year to keep the witch asleep because she's a little girl, as we've just found out. And the zombie believed that at the time, what he was doing was right and just because he was trying to protect his people, essentially. And the curse isn't getting better from people reading it every year. It just sort of exacerbates the situation. And Norman's like, well, you know what? I've got to do something different, which we don't find out till later. They emerge together out. The zombies come out first. The people are ready to kill. Norman runs out front. He's like, stop. And we get a really good heartfelt moment where the rest of the crew, they all hold hands and sort of create like a human wall so the other humans can't get at the zombies. And I thought that was like pretty heartwarming, like pretty heartfelt, pretty heartwarming. It was a good moment. It was big, almost like the climax of the movie was everybody works together.
Yeah, it was a big turn for everybody because it's also like Alvin the bully and his sister who was also picking on him, like a big turn for them to kind of accept the situation that this is the reality of it. Norman has authority in the situation to accept that somebody that they were giving no authority to before. Now he's actually right about things and they're. And yeah, like it's a big vulnerable moment, and it mirrors out things towards the crowd about how they've been behaving, that they've been monstrous and grotesque to these things that they consider to be monstrous and grotesque.
Yeah,
you're right. It's a great moment.
What a twist that the humans listen. They listen to him. And Norman explains that they were cursed for doing something, and now it has to stop, and they listen to him about this curse. They don't just all pull guns out like they did in the first place. But then the Sky Witch just starts blasting the town, starts creating havoc, and the town is in full disarray. We get that funny scene where they're like driving through town, like, and like a car just comes and fucking rolls, which I thought was funny for no reason.
Yeah.
Just the town's in just complete disarray.
They're freaking out. The sky is turning into a giant monster.
The sky is literally falling. They drive out to the woods. Excuse me if I missed anything here, because like I feel like I missed a moment where they get to the woods. I know that it's like Norman is essentially like, I'm going to go in and do this myself. And the mom is like, no, you're not. You have to stay with us and everybody be safe. But they finally just listen to Norman and let him go into the woods. Is that basically what happens?
Yeah, and like it's also a moment for where the dad starts to also listen to Norman,
Right? Yeah.
And even if it's something he doesn't understand, it's not something he should be shunning. It's not something he should be punishing, just because he doesn't understand it. And so, like accepting, like, can we borrow the car? You know, that like that's a big turnaround for the dad as well.
Yeah, okay.
And then you get that whole part where it's the Norman, the chief judge, now a zombie, in the middle seat, and the sister in the back, and they're having like a car trip argument on their way to save the world. But like finally, like the parents are doing like much healthier things of listening and being patient with the situation, and letting Norman have his chance to explain himself a little bit better.
Mm-hmm.
But also it's hilarious because
also,
the zombie is
oh yes, right there.
Yeah, with his knees up to his chin. Yeah.
And I had forgotten at that point that the other humans can't hear what he's actually saying, so it just sounds like grunts. But when he's talking to Norman, you can hear what he's saying, and he's just like, I want people to, I'm just doing my best here. And Courtney's like, he's on my side, and he's like, rah, 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 rah. He's like, and he's talking about me, isn't he? Which I thought was a funny little moment. Yeah, so we get that sight gag. They pull up to the forest. Norman goes into the woods, and we get a really cool. There's like a swirling sort of tornado of souls kind of image.
It's the cyclone coming down towards towards the grave.
Yeah, and clearly the witch was buried under a tree, unmarked grave, but still they could know where it was, and. He has a conversation with the witch. She's the electro mode that's in Steve's background there. And he tries to level with the spirit. And she says, I don't want to go to sleep and you can't make me. And it was a really cool shot at that moment. Because during all of this, actually before that, there was the cool shot of him like trying to run up to her. And when she's like, you can't make me, she's shooting spikes out of the ground, which was really, really well done. And that's when she shows herself as the Electro Witch. He starts ad-libbing a story kind of at her that's similar to like a storybook, but about her, which I think is how he like changes it, which was great. And the music during this sequence, much like that opening, was very good and unexpectedly great.
Yeah, it's also sort of a it's a similar it is the same song but just changed to be more intense
and she sort of pulls him out of reality, and they're kind of as the world sort of falls down around them. They're sort of fighting on little pieces of land and trees that are sort of floating around in this void. And I thought that it reminded me of like a Final Fantasy sort of end boss area, where there's in Final Fantasy VII, you go into the crater and then it turns into like you're just jumping from platform to platform that's like floating rocks and stuff. I thought that was really cool.
It certainly gets like very primordial.
I literally wrote, this is some Final Fantasy shit. Awesome.
I mean, it's just fantasy shit.
I know.
Like everything.
I know. Thank you. How did they do? Is the lightning a practical like effect?
Yep. Do
you know all about it?
Read all about it. Just honestly, just look up a couple making of videos for this movie specifically, and you can see some of the stuff that you would never think they could do practically, and they figure it out. They do crazy stuff, and it's wild.
I'm interested.
I think
with composite shots and layering and all that kind of stuff. Yeah,
I think the missing link is like the one where they had to use some CG in order to do water and stuff. But even Kubo, a lot of the water effects they do practically as well. It's just super impressive.
I did notice between the two movies, when he dives into the water in Missing Link, it looks more like a video game water, but those shots of like the ocean and the waves in Kubo look a lot more like a practical thing that they created. So yeah. I'm excited to see that.
Yeah, and it's not to say that they don't digitally clean things up here and there to add some like motion blur or something like that too, because you can't have motion blur when everything is an individual photograph. But
that said, like when they show, I noticed it was shown really well in the like moments where you see the zombie with like the sort of hair that comes down like this. I was looking at the top of his head, and you could see the frames change for where the hair was when they changed into went from frame to frame, which I thought was a really cool. That's how you know it's like not CGI and it is real. You know what I mean? Like it's And I'm glad that they didn't try to like clean that up digitally, because it adds to that realism of
yeah. I mean, if it looks so much like CGI to the end point of it just looking like CGI, it's like, well, why would you not? You need to have those creases and crimps and weirdness there. It's part of the charm of the medium, right?
It's like it's like the fingerprints on the old Wallace and Gromit stuff.
Yeah,
It's
exactly.
interesting to see those move around. So basically he says, "You are not alone, you have to remember," and grabs her hand, and she turns back into a person and starts to remember her past. Norm sort of levels with her again and tells her that she doesn't need to make people suffer because there is good in the world. And she's basically just like, "I just want my mommy," which was a real fucking blow. Like that hit me really hard. And they sort of sit down under the tree. They in this moment, I think they're in like a place between time, or the forest has reverted back to full foliage. It was sort of there's parts in this movie where it starts becoming difficult to like realize what's real and what's sort of in the like between zones. And that like that shot with the tree where they're sitting there and she finally falls asleep and the curse is lifted, like that whole little moment was very good. We see when she falls asleep, the zombie's skin like floats off and they become full ghosts again, and they look like their old selves. And the parents find him and give him props. They give him his big ups for doing the thing. You did it.
Yeah.
And Norman thanks Neil,
He thanks Jesus, he thanks his agent.
Thanks God.
Yeah.
But that warmed my heart. And then the most heartwarming moment is they're back at home. We get a shot that's reminiscent of the beginning. Norm's watching a movie. The grandma's in the back, and the dad walks in, and he's like, "Is grandma here? I know she's here, right?" And he kind of talks to her, kind of like the dog scene with Neil earlier.
Yeah, he uses Norman as a medium.
And I got misty. My eyes went. Ugh.
Yeah, nice.
Yeah,
I got real misty during when she's freaking out and he's just trying to get her attention. That was when I was falling apart emotionally. It's like, oh my god, this is so good, my heart.
And that is essentially the movie ParaNorman. A great use of 90 minutes. I think that probably could have been a little bit longer if it wasn't literally stop motion. And I'm surprised that they were able to use this time so well. So
they took it frame by frame, if you will.
Yes.
If you guys don't have any additional notes, we can get to our special. Actually, here we go. Let's do this and have a little quick conversation about this.
If you had to pick one, what do you think the Home
Probably all
Alone
going to
is?
agree.
Can someone please tell me what the Home Alone? I really gotta know. When is the Home Alone of it all?
What is the Home Alone of it all?
That's the Home Alone of it all.
So the idea of the Home Alone of it all is essentially in the movie Home Alone, Kevin McAllister slaps down the blueprints. And when he slaps down the blueprints, he's gearing up to set a bunch of traps for people. And people went to see that movie to see that scene. I watched that sequence over and over. Steve has hypothesized that it's the sort of trailer moments, the scenes you're there to see. Sometimes it's just literally the third act. And I'll make it real simple this week. My Home Alone of it all is basically when he walks into that circle of headstones, the gravestones, and tries to read the incantation, and it all just kind of falls on its face. Do you guys have do you have like a different idea?
Yeah, mine is when the camera does that rotation of him when he's talking to no one and it turns and you can just see the town full of ghosts. That's my Home Alone of it all.
Yeah, I would agree with that, Steve, because for something called ParaNorman with it doesn't hold back from the get-go of the paranormal stuff going on. The fact that there is ghosts and zombies, and there kind of is a cliff between the two, or kind of a rift between the two, that like these aren't the exact same things, but they're both in this movie. There's just a lot that goes on. Like most certainly when you get to the circle of gravestones, that's when things the gas pedal is pushed. And that's when the pace picks up. You've been given all the information you need, and now the ride will start. You've done your line up to it, but you've kind of been peppered in with all this stuff along the way. I would almost say it's a combination of both, where they would show both those things in the trailer. They would, and you're there to see both those things.
It's almost like we would call one the Home Alone of it all, and two the Home Alone of it all, two Escape from New York.
Yes, but not 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or any of the other ones. No French Stewart, please.
Home Alone 3, where he's just kind of, his mom goes out for a couple hours, 3 times.
Yeah, the ParaNorman activity starts right out of the gate in this movie. I'll tell you that much.
Yeah. But which do I say? That just means there's more in the buffet to enjoy.
Excellent. Well, with that,
it's time to play Guess the MPAA.
Hello, my name is ParaNorman Activities, and you are on the finest game show that is on this side of, hey, did you see this one? And that, of course, is the MPAA guessing game. Tim, you know the rules. However, I'm going to quickly try to explain them. I've never written this down, and I say it wrong every week. I'm going to give you the first 2 numbers of a 5-digit number. The certificate number is, of course, the certificate number at the end of the credits that determines the number and the series of numbers that they give to each movie when they give it a rating from PG to rated R, whatever. That said, Tim, you know the rules. I'm going to go back and forth. Your first 2 numbers this week, and we're far into the future, the first 2 numbers this week are 4-7. So please give me the 3-digit number that'll give us the 5 digits total. Tim, please go first. What are the 3 digits?
555.
Higher. Steve.
666.
Lower, Tim.
599.
Higher, Steve.
621.
Okay, let's go.
The number is 47694. Thank you for playing the MPAA guessing game.
What? 694?
MPAA, everyone.
I said 666, and you said lower.
I said higher.
Wow.
It's like
I thought you said lower too,
anyway.
but
It doesn't fucking matter. Oh, Cass is here. Jason, it's been a month. You've got this. 623 lies. Thanks, Luna Divonair. I think I said that right. Did I say that right? That, of course, is the MPAA guessing game. I don't fuck.
Called Guess the MPAA.
It is now, of course, time for our... Oh, what's up, all 7 viewers? What's up, people in the place to be? It is time for our... Why can't I ever... For our final thoughts.
For our final thoughts.
It's time for our final thoughts.
Bum, 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 bum.
This is, of course, the final thoughts segment. Essentially, we're going to give our final thoughts, our in summation, if you will. And just like the beginning of the show, it is the duty of the guest to go first.
Please, that booty.
So, Tim, please give us your final thoughts. And if you would like to give it some sort of rating, whether it's serious or hilarious, please hit us with that now.
Well, I'll say a lot of the movie for me was encapsulated in the moment towards the first third after the the play goes awry and they're on the car ride home and the dad grounds Norman and everyone's frustrated and and the mom explains that like it's not that he hates you or anything like that, is that he's scared. And Norman says like, he shouldn't be scared of me at all. And he's like, it's not scared of you, just the situation. And like, yeah, like when you don't understand, you get scared, and you end up making like bad decisions. There was a lot about that especially hit me, and was where like the main thesis of the whole story is kind of unveiled at that point, of people being scared, not understanding, and reacting poorly and making poor decisions as a result of their going, being informed by their emotions in the wrong direction, rather than holding on to what they should focus on, that this is somebody I care about and I should be informed by that first. And that, coupled with the bullying message of like, bullying creates more bullies and all that kind of stuff. And I think this is like, if I were to have kids, it would be a required viewing kind of movie. And because it does speak well to that kind of message of a stronger sense of morals, of judging people by character rather than these surface level aesthetics that you may or may not understand. And to have such a nuanced topic, I always appreciate, especially when handled so creatively and thoughtfully. And Leica Studios, with though a very, very, very small library of movies that they've made so far, hopefully a whole lot more, but they handle it very, very well. And I look forward to, as you guys continue to review the movies this month, the other things that you'll kind of unveil and discover and discuss with your other guests later on. So with that, I kind of almost don't want to give this a hilarious rating. I just want to give it a solid 5 out of 5, because the incredible amount of creativity, craftsmanship, like to even think of like, for the cameras that they use for this, were actually just like more or less digital cameras that people would take on vacation kind of thing for taking photos, and making use of, though somewhat simple by comparison to traditional filmmaking, but effectively used equipment to do all this, and painstaking detail, and everything having so much thought and heart put into it, that like you cannot help but be spellbound by these things. So it's always weird that it takes so much to get a crowd to come and watch this stuff, but once they do, I think most people get it in one way, shape, or form. Whether or not they can articulate exactly what they're experiencing, they're still experiencing from this stuff. And so, yeah, I give it a solid 5 out of 5, just for that alone.
Excellent. Well, thank you, Tim. Thank you so much.
That's your second 5 out of 5.
Yeah. Castaway in this so far, yeah.
Funky Monkey Funk 4D says in the chat, I've had this and Coraline on Blu-ray for a while now. Gotta put them on the list.
Mm-hmm.
Go out and watch it. Steve, hit us with your final thought for the film ParaNorman.
This is one of the few movies that I do own on Blu-ray. I don't have a massive collection, but I do remember when it came out, I went and bought it immediately, because I was like, this movie, though it's not life-changing, it's definitely something that is worth having. Not just seeing, but having, and ensuring that you can watch it again or show it to people. I don't think a lot of people have seen this one. And, as the heart of the show is, hey, did you see this one? I often find myself asking people, hey, have you seen ParaNorman? And the answer is often no. And it makes me sad, because the movie is great. I love almost everything about it. There's not really anything that I can say is bad. There's a couple of jokes that don't work for me, but there's an overwhelming amount of jokes that do work for me. And they work for me so well that I forget about the ones that don't. And that aside, the comedy aside, there are moments in this movie where I'm on the verge of weeping, because my heart is so full and happy, or sad and devastated. I would recommend everybody watch this, no matter what your tastes are as a casual film viewer or a hardcore cinephile, some sort of freaky movie pervert. Yeah. You'll probably like something about it. And I give this movie two halves of a bisected dog, and you can kiss the butt or you can kiss the mouth, and it's the same taste, baby.
You get the rare laugh track final thought. Thank you, Steve. It's real simple, guys. It's real simple. Here's my final thought. Excellent kids movie that teaches a lot of lessons about acceptance and fear and how to deal with negative emotions and bullying. These are things anyone can benefit from. So it would be a great family film with bits for the parents to enjoy, as well with bits for the parents to enjoy as well, like the adult jokes and dark themes. Ultimately, it wouldn't really be a movie for me normally, paranormally, but it was an interesting watch for sure. I give this movie a 3.8 out of 5. Do yourself a favor and check it out for the animation / stop motion, if nothing else. I give this movie 4 zombies turning to ghosts and 1 turning to dust.
I don't know what that means, but it's sick.
But it's provocative.
That's what you guys both sound like when you're sleeping. Without your CPAP machines.
It's true. That's what I sound like when I snore. Ask my wife. This brings us to the end of the show. Thank you for everybody who watched tonight. If you are here now, please go and follow us on all social media. You can find us at Hey Did You See This One? Like I said at the top of the show, you can basically find every episode of the show that we've done. This will live forever on Twitch. However, tomorrow morning, Friday morning, I always put up the YouTube version of the show. It's basically unedited, which I think is just the way. I will say that Tim's episodes always perform well, so no pressure, Tim. You're sitting at one of our highest organic numbers right now for Assault on Precinct 13, so don't be surprised if we ask you to be back constantly as we do. There's a reason.
Anytime.
There's a reason why you are going to be number 7 very soon to be on the show. And with that, hold on. And with that, there's one question I think needs to be asked, and as I said before, it is a thing we do around here to have the guest ask a particular question. So, Tim, do you have a question you'd like to ask?
Well, yes. Hey, did you see this one?
I kind of regret my rating. I don't like that I described the mouth of a dog and the butt of the dog as a flavor.
But I mean, generally speaking, dogs' mouths are pretty well the flavor of a dog's butt. That same dog's butt or another dog's butt.